Hey everyone, this is Mike with the One Stop Co-op Shop, and I thought I'd do a special little video. I recently covered Arkham Horror the Card Game's Chapter 2, their kind of restart of the series with a new core set, and a game that I've covered a lot in recent years that I quite enjoy is Earthborne Rangers. And Earthborne Rangers borrows a heck of a lot of ideas from Arkham Horror the Card Game, and I think they could appeal to similar players. So now that there's a new launching off point for Arkham, some of you might be getting into it for the first time, and Earthborne Rangers is kicking right along with their second full campaign and some other new expansions coming. I wanted to do a comparison between the two, so I'm going to hit them on 10 points of comparison. And this is not a ranking video. I'm not going to say which is better in each of these points of comparison. I'm just going to go through some of the key things I think somebody getting into these games should know, and hopefully your own taste will help you decide which game would be better for you, because Arkham's going to win in some ways for some people in some of these categories, but Earthborne could win for different people in the exact same category just because of what their preferences are. So hopefully this is helpful. Let me know in the comments, but let's jump right in. Oh, and just to say, I did get review copies of Earthborne Rangers stuff. I have gotten review copies of Arkham stuff. In terms of my own money, I bought at least $1,000 worth of Arkham stuff for all of the Chapter 1 releases before Asmodee started sending me review copies. So I'm certainly more invested in Arkham and have spent a lot more years with it. Whereas Earthborne Rangers, I think they've sent me everything I've played for it. All right, but let's get in and start with setup. So Arkham, for a core experience, is starting out. If you get the core set, it does give you a pre-made deck for each of the investigators. You can just kind of grab that and go. They're not the strongest decks, and you're going to want to mess around with them once you know the game. But that's certainly nice from a first place setup standpoint. And the nice thing is, for the new scenarios that come with the core box, at least for the first one, you just grab this preset set of cards. You take out the little story-based things. You put out the locations they tell you to put out. You shuffle the encounters, and you're mostly good to go. Although when you get to later scenarios, you're going to have to pull out cards from different little packs and shuffle them all together. And some cards and scenarios are put to the side and don't enter play until later. And some enemies have to be put to the side. And some cards from the encounter deck have to be removed. So things do get a bit more onerous, especially in later campaigns and later scenarios when you have to kind of track down all the stuff you need for a given play session. But the nice thing with Arkham setup is that once you get set up for a given scenario, you're mostly able to just go through and draw cards and move through places. Yes, they're going to add some new cards and new locations as things get revealed, but that's pretty smooth playing in general. Earthborne Rangers, instead of just giving you pre-con decks, has this whole prologue you play through that can kind of help you create your character. It's pretty straightforward, but also if you just want to jump in with a character, you're just kind of picking some cards from different classes and stuff. You might not know what you're doing, but it's still pretty straightforward in terms of setup. But definitely a bit less plug and play than Arkham, but that's because you're starting a longer scenario campaign instead of just a quick little 3-scenario tutorial thing like Arkham has. But the most important part of setup is setting up the location you're moving to, kind of like the encounters in Arkham. So you get a location card, and that'll either give you specific cards for that location, or you take them from this generic valley set, depending on which campaign you're playing. And then you also take the terrain cards for whichever terrain you're traveling through. So I'm going into this location, but I traveled through the grassland. And you just shuffle them together. So that is pretty quick. The big negative, or potential negative, when comparing it to Arkham, is that Arkham has more onerous initial setup, but Earthborne Rangers, you'll be traveling from location to location every play session, something I'll talk about more later. And each time, you have to break down the cards, separate back out the types, and put them back, and then you got to build a new set of encounters and challenges and things when you go to the new location. So while playing, Arkham has more of an upfront setup for a scenario, but then you'll be playing it for a while, whereas Earthborne Rangers has quicker little micro setups, but they happen much more frequently. So either one could appeal to your taste, but I would say neither one is terrible for setup. Okay, next, number 2, we're looking at the decks you actually use and the character variety and who you can control. So in Arkham, you pick specific investigators. They'll have specific stats that are super important for the skill test you'll be taking. They'll have an ongoing special power. They'll have at least one card that you add to their deck that's super good and unique to them, one card that's very negative and unique to them, and then they'll have different restrictions on what kind of cards you can add to your deck, often limiting them to 1 or 2 specific classes, so that you can only add add survivor cards or only add rogue cards. And those will kind of give them a very specific focus. Like they might be better at combat, they might be better at investigating, which will also go along with their statistics. So you can build a somewhat similar deck with different characters, but certainly your characters are going to push you in very specific directions, and each one has their own unique flair. So that's for Arkham characters. I would say if you like experimenting with different characters and like variety in kind of the characters you can control, tons to have fun with here. Earthborne Rangers, on the other hand, has you combine two things together, whereas that character kind of controls what you can get. So you combine a specialty, which is like actually going to determine your character card, but then which things you can add for about half of your deck. But then you're also going to get a background, which will control the other half of the deck you can add. So in some ways, it's more freeform than Arkham, but it's also less unique. I mean, I guess these are pretty unique personalities that do have once per turn, often powers you can use that can be pretty impactful. But at the same time, they feel maybe a bit more generic, but you are combining things together, so that's kind of cool for an extra flair of deck construction. But then also in Earthborne Raiders, you get to pick your aspect, which is kind of akin to your stats in Arkham, so you are kind of more mixing and matching and combining things to meet your preferences in Earthborne Rangers, whereas Arkham, you pick a character, and that kind of gives you everything right there. So maybe a bit more creativity and combo-liciousness in how Earthborne Rangers does it, but I would say with some loss of uniqueness and like variety and trying different characters that Arkham offers. Now, both games, it's important to note, don't just have you start with a deck, but you get to level it up because these are campaign games. And they do it in very different ways. There's actually a pretty big difference between the two games. So for Arkham, you get a selection of cards in classes that have experience costs. And depending on how well you do in a given scenario, you'll earn more or less experience. And then you can spend that experience at the end of a scenario to either upgrade cards, so some of these cards will be better versions of cards you already have in your deck, or to just add new cards to your deck and throw away old ones. So thematically, it doesn't necessarily make sense. It's like, hey, because I did so well in that last scenario, now I have a shotgun. Who knows? Certainly the theme is a little bit strained, but your deck is certainly getting stronger. You're adding new combos, you're adding new abilities, you're leveling up cards. And it's important to note that these all have to tie into the levels of cards you're allowed to build into your deck based on your unique investigator identity. So if you play again with a different investigator, you're going to level up in a very different way and have very different options available to you and build very different combos. So Arkham suffers a little bit on the theme of the leveling up, but does give you really cool options to level up your investigator. Although, to be fair, you might add the coolest card ever to your deck and then not draw it at all in the next two scenarios because there is card draw luck here as well. So that's not always going to work out great for people, but Arkham has a pretty cool leveling up system. Earthborne Rangers, on the other hand, does things incredibly differently because what happens with this game is you are getting reward cards, unlocking them. These are the ones from the Legacy of the Ancestors set, by completing side quests and main quests. So when you help somebody out in the valley, when you defeat some big monster, you will get a unique card that is based on that. So thematically, this is great because you actually have these moments that relate to like major events and side quests you complete and actually have pictures that go along with it. You can be like, oh, remember when we helped that dude fish? Now we have this cool fishing rod. Or like if you defeat a monster, you'll get like a coat made from his hide or a weapon that's made from his claws. So really, really cool in terms of thematics. And then these, just like Arkham, get added to your deck. So you take out some of your original cards and add in these stronger cards, and they are way stronger. Like even if you don't like the effects of cards, both Arkham and Earthborne Rangers have you able to discard cards from your hand to boost your tests, and these reward cards are just so much better for that. Now this is where I think Earthborne Rangers might fall a little flat for some people, in that the reward cards you're getting, while yes, they are limited in which character can take them sometimes based on their cost. Like if I have a card that costs 1 billion red and I just don't have enough to play it, I'm probably not going to add it to my deck. But besides that, it is the same reward cards that are coming from the same side quests, regardless of who I'm playing. So as you add them to your deck, you're kind of, in a way, thinning out your original uniqueness, like the fact that you were somebody who shapes magic, or the fact that you were somebody who explores really well. That's kind of going away a little bit, because these cards are, again, just pretty much straight up better than and all the cards that started in your deck. So while Arkham, for better or worse, is putting you along certain paths, like this character is only going to get Survivor cards of a high level, this character is only going to get Mystic cards of a high level, Earthborne Rangers sends you down kind of the same paths. And yes, if you're playing in a group, some of you are going to get these cards and some of you are going to get those cards, and you can still kind of maintain your identity. But for my true solo campaign that I played of the base game, by the end of the campaign, I think like 60% or 70% of my deck was just reward cards. So I had very few of those unique to my class and unique to my background cards left in my deck. So again, pluses and minuses. Earthborne Rangers is going to win out for theme, for the cards kind of making sense in how you got them, for the stories that they tell, and also consistently lets you get awesome in cool ways. But at the same time, I think it kind of dilutes the uniqueness of your deck. Whereas with Arkham leveling up, it might not make sense why you have those cards, but it's going to play to the strengths of the investigators you already have and will give you more replay in how you level up if you play a campaign with a new investigator. But what are you doing with those cards and how are you playing them? That's my number 4 thing to compare, the card play. So in both games, Arkham and Earthborne, you will have cards in your hand. And in Arkham, you have 3 actions on your turn generally. And one of the things you can do is play a card from your hand. It'll cost a certain number of resources. You are getting those for free every turn, but then some cards will give you special powers to gain even more of them. And some cards are going to be events that have a one-off effect and immediately get discarded. Other ones are going to be assets, allies, and weapons that you play. They might have a certain number of uses before they get discarded, but then you can also discard cards to add bonuses to tests you're about to take. So there is a nice tension in when you want to play cards, when you want to keep them, which cards you want to use for the skill bonus, which cards you want to play for their actual abilities, and how many resources do you want to use, and when you want to save resources, because you even have cards that will let you spend resources to help you out with tests. So lots of interesting tactical card play choices here, although sometimes you'll just be broke and you won't be able to do much of anything. The game certainly has some pain points in that way. Now, in some ways, Earthborne Rangers is incredibly similar. You're also paying for cards. Some of them are also things that go out and have a limited number of uses, like weapons and things. Other ones will be immediate events that do something cool and then get discarded. So there's actually not that much variety in how the cards themselves are played, except in the limiting factors and the resources. So in Arkham, you have 3 actions, and you're using those actions to move, you're using those actions to attack, you're using those actions to play cards with your resources. In Earthborne Rangers, everything is controlled by these aspect tokens, because you can theoretically take as many actions as you want on your turn, but for each action, you're going to use these tokens either to pay for the card. So here I would need, I can't pay for this. I would need 2 fitness to pay the cost of that card. Or when I want to take a test, I would use the exact same tokens. Like if I want to do an awareness test, I could spend 3 of these to have 3 towards succeeding in that test. So really the 2 games are not so different in the card play itself, but in the resource management that they each offer. Because Earthborne Rangers, you get all of these back each round. So I will have 4 green to spend every round. So I'll be really good at green tests, but I can also very consistently play green cards. Whereas in Arkham, I'm getting a resource every round, but a lot of things will cost 3 or 5 or 6 resources. So I'm going to have to save up and not play anything for a few rounds and use my actions for other things. Whereas in Earthborne Rangers, the actions and the resources are one and the same, and they're actually what help you succeed at skill tests as well. So I would say for pluses and minuses, if you like consistency, I think Earthborne Rangers is a little bit nicer to you because you always know exactly what you'll have each round. And if you want to buy something, you will be able to buy it like as soon as you spend the resources on it. Actions are not as much of a limiting factor. Whereas Arkham gives you a little bit more tactical choice in like saving up for things and when to spend them and when not to spend them. But also you can have really painful points, like I mentioned, where you don't have any resources. Whereas in Earthborne Rangers, like, yes, it might suck if you're trying to do blue tests and you just don't have a character that has much blue. That's especially rough in true solo. But to be fair, Arkham also has true solo problems where you need to cover every type of skill test. And if you can't, then you might be in a bad way. But yeah, you're never going to be like completely unable to do stuff in Earthborne Rangers, whereas Arkham can sometimes leave you high and dry and dying. There's certainly a more desperate game thematically, so that makes sense. But again, the card play is very similar for both. It really comes down to the resources available to make those cards come out. And following up naturally from that is how the skill tests work. Probably one of the biggest changes for Earthborne Rangers. And one of the things that makes people hate Arkham, for those who hate it the most, is how skill tests work. Because how it works in Arkham is you'll try to do a skill test. Let's say you're trying to punch somebody, okay? So you're using your strength of 3. Maybe you have some cards you discarded or some bonuses to give you a bonus to it. And then you draw from the bag and you check and whoops, this is a -4. It's a special token. Or, okay, I'm getting all the special ones right now. Or here you go, I got -1 to my test. Oh, I got -5. I got -2. They are pretty much all minuses, by the way. There's like a few, usually depending on difficulty, pluses, but that's about it. And that's going to modify your statistic with the bonuses you did, and then you see if you match the threshold. But the huge thing here is that after you do a test, the token you drew goes back in the bag. You could draw it again. You could draw it again. You could draw it again. You can keep on getting happy tokens. You can keep on getting sad tokens. There are lots of variants. I've used some myself, home variants where you keep tokens out until you draw an auto failure, an auto success. But if you play the rules as written, you are very much in a swingy place where you could get positive or negative draws quite often. So there can be a lot of frustration. Certainly the chaos bag and those tests and just the luck of the draw can be very annoying in the game. But at the same time, I do like the fact that they have this chaos bag because there are tons of abilities that mess with the chaos bag. There's this entire mechanic in 2 of the older campaigns where you would add blessings or curses to the bag to actually give you different types of tokens to grab. There are cards that let you steal tokens from the bag and hold on to them for different powers. So the bag can be frustrating, it can be annoying, but it also has some cool interplay with the card effects to let you try out neat things in the game. Earthborne Rangers, instead of a bag, has a deck, the Challenge deck, and these are shuffled, and it's very similar to Arkham. When you want to take a test, instead of just automatically having your stat, like I have 3 strength, instead it comes down to those resource tokens I mentioned. So if I'm taking a yellow test, I might spend all my spirit, but let's say, I'm taking a green test, maybe I already spent 2 to play a card, now I only have 2. So you decide how much you want to commit. You can still discard cards to help out. And interestingly, the test type has both a color, so in this case, blue focus, but also has an approach. So cards, in Arkham, it's like every card boosts intelligence or boosts strength. Here, it's kind of like a 2-tier system of what they boost. But besides that, you're still discarding cards to increase your stats. You're using items and things to help you out. But then instead of pulling a token out of a bag, you flip a card from a deck and you check what you've got. Okay, let's say it was a green test. It would have a 0 modifier here. A big thing, the modifiers are way nicer. You get some +1s, you get some 0s, you get some -1s, and you have a very small number of -2s. In this whole big deck, there's 1 -2 for each of the 4 colors. So you can, compared to Arkham, where there is an auto fail token that is the bane of our existence, you can guarantee quite often in Earthborne Rangers, like, hey, even if I draw a -2, I'll still succeed at this test. Because the swinginess, the sort of a level of variance in the card results here is so much lower than Arkham. Arkham can go from -6 to +1. Earthborne Rangers only goes from +1 to -2. So if you like consistency, if you like a nicer randomness factor, absolutely Earthborne Rangers wins out. Now, it does not have the whole messing with the deck that Arkham does. You can't add new cards in here or anything. But what it does have for a thematic thing, but also some extra complication, are these symbols at the bottom. Because every time that you draw a card for a test, you're also getting a symbol. And this is going to trigger super thematic things with the monsters and encounters and wildlife we'll talk about later. Like, ooh, if you drew a blue, the predator is going to attack this scruff, this thing. Or somebody's going to come over and eat this root. So things are interacting with each other, sometimes in ways that are helpful to you, sometimes not, based on these icons that are flipped at the bottom, which is awesome. It's thematic. It makes the world feel alive. It's also negative in that it's more effects to track, and sometimes a lot of things will happen at once from one flip. And also, just to put it out there, because it is potentially an annoyance, Earthborne Rangers is not a game where you automatically want to use all your tokens every turn. Like Arkham, you're never going to not use your 3 actions unless you're crazy, because at the very least, you can get more resources or draw more cards. In Earthborne Rangers, though, it might not make any sense for you to do a really weak 1 red test, because you got to flip a card that could make a tiger eat your face off because you took that test. So there is a kind of inherent danger, especially when nasty things are out in the world, to flipping cards willy-nilly, which does make you think in a positive and negative way about whether each test is worth doing doing or not. But yes, the skill tests in Earthborne Rangers, way nicer. Arkham is certainly going for doom and gloom and the feeling of failure. Even on easy difficulty, you can still auto-fail tests, so a big thing to be aware of. All right, next, let's get to encounter draws, and this is honestly where the two games are kind of the most similar, because in both games, basically at the start of your turn, each player is going to draw a card. In Earthborne Rangers, they are not 100% negative, but most of them are. Unless you're in like a really nice location, there's going to be a lot of obstacles and enemies that get in your way. Whereas in Arkham, they are all completely negative. Some of them are going to be like direct things that are attacking you. Some of them are going to be, for Arkham, events that are one-off. But they are adding things to the world, mostly to bother you, mostly to stop you. Arkham will be events that are trying to hurt you, enemies that are trying to dog your heels while you try to progress. And Earthborne is going to be adding a lot of enemies that are trying to hurt you and get in your way while you try to progress. Although again, Earthborne has nicer things, like you might just get like a deer. It's still slightly in your way. It can fatigue you to get around it, but it's not inherently negative. Or you might like just get a root, which doesn't hurt you at all, but you could go and slice some and eat it up to help yourself out. So kind of like the Chaos Bag, they have very similar mechanics here, but Earthborne is way nicer than Arkham when you look at the kind of totality of things you could draw. Also, Earthborne has a mechanic where when you travel from a location, most of the things will go away. I mean, there are some enemies that will follow you. Whereas Arkham, yes, there are some scenario mechanics that will like make an enemy that was chasing you disappear. But most of the time, if you're not dealing with an enemy, then you're just not dealing with that enemy, and he's going to keep on dogging your heels and attacking you. Both games also have a lot of frustration in how these obstacles get in your way and kind of getting around them. But that's a conversation for a later point. So honestly, like the enemies and things you're drawing are really quite similar, except that they are wholly negative and against you in most Arkham scenarios, whereas it's a bit more like actual nature. Some of the things in the world are trying to kill you, and some of them aren't in Earthborne Rangers. All right, now we get into the biggest difference in the games, and really like the one you might want to pay the most attention to, and this is the campaign structure and kind of what quests look like. Because, huge difference, Earthborne Rangers is an open-world adventure game. Arkham Horror is a very, tight scenario-based game. So in Arkham Horror, you'll have a given scenario. You'll have a little story to read for it. You'll be in a specific location. You have a very specific timer for how long you have to complete what you need to do. And you'll be moving around through these different locations, trying to find clues and trying to complete whatever your current quest says, which is usually, most often, to get enough clues to progress or, fight a monster or something. On the negative side, there's more rules. There's more, as I already said, setup. There's a lot of unique things happening for each scenario that you have to deal with. But on the positive side, there is such huge variety in these scenarios, especially if you go back to the old campaigns that are still somewhat available for Arkham. There's just crazy stuff going on, and they tried all these different mechanics, and it gave the game tons of life and tons of adherents who have played it year after year after year, like me. Earthborne Rangers, super different, completely different, in that you will have quests. Some of them are optional side quests with other characters. Some of them are main quests. Some of them are things like delivering biscuits. But you're free to just wander from location to location and totally ignore that stuff. I mean, there are some sort of timers, certainly way less of a time pressure than Arkham has. But yeah, you don't have to do the main quest. You can just go see what's going on in the archaeological outpost. Now, this wandering also leads to some potential aimlessness, because in Arkham, you know exactly what you're trying to do. The quest will have little steps, you'll have this thing happen, then this thing. You'll complete this goal, then this goal, then this goal, and you'll reach a clear ending. And Earthborne Rangers kind of has that too. It's hey, go here and here and here to deliver the biscuits, or go here and here and here to help put out the fires. But again, you don't have to do that, and there's going to be long periods where there is no progression through the quests. Or a quest might just be failed because you waited too long and you didn't get there fast enough. Whereas in Arkham, the main thing you're trying to do is usually getting clues while fighting enemies and avoiding stuff. In Earthborne Rangers, it's all about traveling. You got to get over here. Oh, next quest, you got to get over here. Oh, next quest, you got to get over here. There are scenario goals sometimes within a location once you get to it, but certainly most of your effort in Earthborne Rangers is about getting to the quest instead of doing all these tactical choices and things once you're there. So completely different types of games. Really, this is the biggest thing you want to think about when you're deciding if either of these games is for you. Do you want a kind of more tactical puzzle, or do you want more of an open world adventure with a big world to explore, even if that means sometimes you won't be making any specific progress on any appreciable quest? And that goes right into the sense of discovery discovery and exploration in both games. So in Arkham, as I said, the scenarios have specific kind of events that happen as time moves on. New enemies can appear, new locations can materialize, and each of the places has like flavor text and stuff. So if you want to get into the theme, you can, although it is a very mechanical affair at some times. And yes, there will be surprises in which cards you draw from the encounter deck, but most of that sense of exploration is in traveling around, although again, mostly you're just like finding more places to get clues from, and really in the scenarios themselves and how they progress is where like a lot of the surprise and twists and turns are going to take place in Arkham. Earthborne Rangers, on the other hand, has tons of just traveling around and like seeing, hey, what kind of stuff is in the grasslands? Oh, what kind of stuff is in the mountains? And there's just so many locations to travel to, and a lot of them have their own unique like little things to see and people to talk to. Now, that being said, once you've been in the forest, you kind of seen the stuff that's in the forest. And the majority of locations don't have any unique cards for themselves, so they might have like one or two unique things to discover, but often they don't. It's just like a slightly different forest than another forest, so really they do feel a bit more like those basic location cards in Arkham, where it's just a place to do more of the same actions. But of course, Earthborne Rangers does have, if you want to call it exploration and discovery, the sort of emergent narrative of things trying to eat other things or digging up roots and kind of interacting with the different life forms. And as you progress through the campaign, there is, kind of like Arkham, a lot of twists and turns and some branching choices in the campaign structure and the missions you're completing. Maybe the biggest bonus for Earthborne Rangers is that while Arkham does have some allies you can get and sometimes characters in the campaign, Earthborne Rangers has these NPCs you can just discover different locations or just traveling around the valley, and they'll often have unique side quests for you to go on, which have their own like little exploration feel, and if you beat them, then you get to unlock unique cards to add to your deck. So if you like kind of interacting with NPCs, there is some of that in Arkham. Depending on the campaign, there can be actually quite a lot, but Earthborne Rangers has kind of that fun feel, like, I don't know, Skyrim-esque, where you're just wandering around and seeing random people and saying hi and doing fun things with them. But if I'm being completely honest, there's a bit of more narrative exploration and emergent like discovery in both games. Neither one is to the level of something like Agamonia or Seventh Citadel, where there are cool little exploratory details and discoveries to be made in every nook and cranny of the game. Neither of them's really going for that. All right, almost done. Let's get to the narrative. I mentioned that quite a bit. So Arkham, as I said, in a given campaign, will have some narrative you read before you start the scenario. And as you progress through the acts, you'll get little new things appearing and new things happening. And then between scenarios, you'll have resolutions. You'll talk to characters. Depending on the campaign, you might even form relationships with people. And there is a lot of branching stuff going on. I mean, it's very, sort of pulpy, Lovecraftian stuff. You are battling cultists 90% of the time. And you're, seeing what kind of evil scheme they're trying now. So the story does tend to go down somewhat similar paths. But it's fun. And like I said, some of the campaigns go quite deeply into kind of character interactions and discovering things about people. There's a bit of replay. I mean, a lot of the campaigns are fairly narrative with some branching elements. But if you like reading fun little pulpy adventure stories, I think Arkham's got you covered. And Earthborne Rangers instead has a lot of little entries you read when you first get to a location, kind of like the flavor text in Arkham. But then it also has these side quests you can go on, and it has also its own branching little narrative things. I mean, the big difference, honestly, is that the tone is totally different. Earthborne Rangers, while yes, there are some pretty terrible things you're trying to deal with, and there are some tough moral choices, is very much a game of regrowth and reclaiming and like living with nature. And it's a much more, I would say, positive game. It's kind of post-apocalyptic, but a blooming post-apocalypse, if you want to call it that. Whereas Arkham Horror is like terrible things are happening and people are dying and your investigators are going insane. But I would say the writing is great in both games. Both of them are going to have mixes of little flavor text and interactions with characters and little exciting moments dealing with the events you're trying to solve and the quests you're trying to complete. Although, again, Earthborne Rangers a bit more consistently has like fun encounters with NPCs. Arkham, that's a bit more dependent on the campaign. But yeah, if you want a story experience with reading, like neither game is slamming you with reading. They are certainly games that are more focused on the card play and actually going through the turn-to-turn basics, and then you will sometimes read some long passages. These are not like a choose-your-own-adventure game or some other game where you are reading like pages and pages of text every 5 seconds. That's not their focus. All right, and for my final 10th point, I want to look at the dark side of each game. What's maybe the worst part of the experience for each game? And I would say it's kind of similar for both, in that both of these games can get to a repetitive, frustrating standstill when things aren't going your way. So with Arkham, you're trying to deal with the monsters that have come out. You're trying to move around and investigate. But as more and more monsters come out, you might not be able to fight them. Your health and sanity might be getting low. It might be tough for you to get around even or move because they'll kill you if you do. And you're drawing these chaos tokens and oh my god, they're all terrible ones. You can't succeed at anything. And you can just get into kind of a death spiral where stuff gets worse and worse. And it's too late for you to really fix anything. And the game is mean. And yeah, you can just have a complete loss. Often the campaigns will be fail forward where like your character just picks themselves up with their gaping chest wound and moves on to the next scenario and sees if they can do better next time. But Arkham can certainly have very frustrating situations where you just cannot get anything going. Too many bad things have come out at once. And, like a lot of games, like if too many monsters come out and you aren't dealing with the first ones, it's going to compound. So yeah, there are definitely some frustrations in Arkham. Earthborne Rangers is kind of a similar thing with its own flavor, with repetition and frustration and things kind of getting in your way. Because you're drawing, as I mentioned, these cards every round. And some of them will be just like really annoying, hard to clear obstacles that won't let you move. And again, the vast majority of your time in Earthborne Rangers is spent traveling around, is spent trying to get to the next location and get to the next location and get to the next location. That's how you progress. That's how you do anything in the game. That's how you complete your quests. But if you can't progress because there's an anthill and there's a hungry Scruff and this Velox is trying to eat you and you just can't put the tokens on the location to go to the next location. You can't put the tokens on the location to go to the next location. It can be really frustrating. And like I already said, you have to rebuild the decks each time you move to a new location. So Earthborne Rangers is very much sometimes a like sort of fetch quest backtracking feeling game where you just got to travel and travel and travel. I will advise anybody playing the game, make sure you get your fitness stat up. Don't start your game with a one red character like this. Make sure you pick cards for your deck that let you get bonuses to traveling and moving through locations, because you're going to do it over and over and over again. So Arkham can get you in a death spiral where you just can't make any progress and the Chaos Bag can waste your actions and ruin your life, but Earthborne Rangers can melt your brain with the tedium of moving through the same forest for the 5th time just because you need to get to the next location for your next quest, and you just keep on having to do this stuff. And yeah, it's fun to see NPCs. Yeah, it's fun to experience new things, but really you're doing a lot of the same stuff much of the time. So there you go. That is Earthborne Rangers versus Arkham Horror. Several things to think about if you're wanting to jump into either game. If I was going to rank them myself, yes, I would put Arkham Horror a little bit higher because that's one of my top 3 games of all time, whereas I think Earthborne Rangers is in my top 20. But to be fair, I've, again, invested over $1,000 into Arkham, and I've been playing it for over 10 years. Earthborne Rangers is still pretty new. So I'm not saying that Arkham is better than Earthborne Rangers. It's just the one that I've put so much of my life into. But both great games with, as you saw, a lot of similarities and quite a few differences. So hopefully this helps you pick one you might like, or hey, avoid them both if these aren't your bag, these kind of card-based adventure type of games. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope that was helpful. Let me know in the comments. And a special thank you to our biggest Patreon supporters, J. William F., Steve Wren, KCW, Andrew R., and Chris C. We'll see you at the next stop.